We've been for years now battling for, have a common agenda, and we reached in a sort of way, we reached some interesting goal in that. And now it's the second phase, the most interesting phase, the operational phase. How do we get there?
We stand with 14 years left to actually achieve what's in the new 2030 agenda, and it's very clear then when we talk about sexual and reproductive health and rights, we really are in a hurry to live up to what's in the new agenda.
The SDGs really are our goals. They're the world's goals. They're not the United Nations goals. They're not government goals. Of course, governments are absolutely critical, but we need to make them ours. We all need to work towards them, and if that happens, they can become a phenomenal tool for forcing the question of how do we achieve these really important and ultimately very achievable objectives.
We should try and implement the Sustainable Development Goals as a whole, not as Goal 3 or Goal 5 or Goal 4. It should be together. And in doing so, make sure we hold the thread and make sure that SRHR is the guiding principle that we take forward in doing so.
We're in a world, I don't need to say, full of so many problems and challenges. Many of those problems have solutions. A lot of them around sexual reproductive health and rights, gender equality, human rights are basic tools for human development and fulfillment of potential for development and poverty eradication. So we need to bring to the fore these are cost-effective investments, they have intergenerational effects, and we know how to do it. We know the solutions.
We are looking at what is working in the African context. In this part of the world, it's very clear that our governments are still grappling to start to understand, demystify SDGs, but also integrate the SDGs. And specifically, it was very clear that SRHR, as a priority that is provided for in the SDGs, in the targets, is very clear, but it's likely to disappear at national level because of issues of resources that are limited and issues of the realities of the communities where we come from.
We are most often told like we are the future leaders. And I feel that it doesn't mean that we only matter in the future. We matter right now. So engaging us positively and building our capacity towards a longer trajectory platform makes us work together, especially in the implementation, review and follow-up of the Sustainable Development Goals.
We actually have a really good foothold in the SDGs, and we have to keep up the momentum and sustain the interest in order that governments will implement the agenda that has been put forth. And of course, we want to also utilize the SDGs to go further, right? Because we want to go into the issues that are not mentioned yet, which is access to comprehensive sexuality education, access to safe abortion, right to sexual diversity and sexual orientation and gender identity. So I think that these are the three things we will have to try to explore the SDG framework and see how we can push the agenda further.
We don't have everything that we wanted in there in the agreement. So we have the soggy question and we have the question of abortion, which is not part of the agenda, and it's still matters that destroy lives every day across the world. So those issues we still need to deal with, although they're not part of the 2030 agenda. We really need to step up. Funding is decreasing for advocacy in the European region, and at the same time there's really a strong need for Europe to continue its leadership on sexual and reproductive health and rights.
Today we're looking at, can Europe maintain its progressive stance on SRHR?
We should not assume that the gains we've made we will actually be able to maintain them, because we see so much pushback at a political level, at the European level, in different countries on issues like abortion, for example, now very active in Poland. But I think there's so many more issues where we assume that we would only be able to make progress, but that's not the case.
in the last decades, in specifically Western European countries, we have kind of fallen asleep a little bit. We have settled, in my own country, in Belgium, for instance, between Catholics and non-Catholics. We have had these battles in the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, and so we had some kind of a truce. And so we don't talk about these issues anymore. And they are on the agenda, again, completely out of the globalization of the world, because in many other parts of the world they are on the agenda. We don't have a common language anymore. We agree on many things, but we might disagree on other things, and we need to reunite and really discuss these issues.
The level at which, the advocacy level, which actually I think is much more troubling, is this notion of colonizing of human rights language and using of human rights notions by these organizations. So most of them will actually refer to themselves as human rights NGOs. They all claim to be fighting for dignity, their human dignity, freedom of religion, rights of the family, all of these references to rights and freedoms that are very well rooted in international human rights treaties, in the international consensus on human rights.
There is a growing fight between different visions of how we want Europe to be. The type of advances we've seen around abortion rights in places like Spain and Portugal, and the support for the idea of people being able to plan their families. I think that's made people very scared, just as it's made people scared that there's a different idea now about women's equality and women's rights. They've got together, they've organized together, as is their democratic right. And what we are going to do is to organize so that we can create a society that is more tolerant of others, but equally uplifts the rights to conscience and to autonomy that every individual should enjoy.
I think the challenge is that their position is getting more sophisticated in how they fight our issues, and so we have to respond in kind, and we have to be more proactive and plan ahead, have long-term plans so that we can reach our goals.
I think international solidarity being extremely important, and also solidarity within civil society in Ireland has been very critical to our successes. So that rather than a time not so long ago where on the abortion issue, the IFPA was really the only organisation working on the abortion issue, and now what we have is a much broader civil society that has really embraced an understanding that you can't talk about human rights without talking about reproductive health and reproductive rights within that.
Well, I think the LGBTI rights is facing very similar threats, but also opportunities as the SRHR movement does. We're having the same opponents, we're fighting the same shrinking space, and in that I think that there's a great opportunity for more collaboration, fighting back and winning the struggles together.
L'Europe doit être le fer de lance, l'institution politique qui fait de la défense des droits sexuels et reproductifs son identité. Elle a beaucoup apporté aux femmes d'Europe, mais aussi aux femmes sur toute la planète.
The EU needs to do a lot more if it's going to be truly the champion of women's rights and SRHR. At the moment we see lots of pet issues such as SOGI, child early forced marriage, etc. being advanced. But unless we can break the consensus on reproductive rights, which is held back at the EU by Malta, Poland and Hungary, we're not going to get anywhere in advancing the whole SRHR agenda.
We have to always remind ourselves how far we've come. So we've all, as a movement, come really far, and we have to say that we have come far. Secondly, if we have to fight so hard for it, it's because it's worth fighting for. So I think that if we have a purpose that we feel really fulfilled about, then there's always hope, right? And you love what you're doing, then that's hope. Yeah.
Sexual and reproductive health and rights underpins the entire Sustainable Development Agenda. It's not just 3 and 5, it's the entire. As long as 300,000 women die in their childbirth, as long as 250 million people do not have access to family planning, as long as 1 in 3 women are victims of violence against them simply because of their gender, there will not be sustainable development.
Progress towards achieving universal access to sexual and reproductive health and rights will be synonymous with progress towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals.
For sure, this is the beginning of our way for regaining reproductive rights, but we will continue. We will fight till the end. We will be fighting every day.